"Beat me at tennis and I'll kiss you." The words, dripping with contempt, echoed across Westbrook Academy's pristine courts. Victoria Sterling stood like a goddess of privilege, designer tennis dress immaculate against her perfect skin, auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail that probably cost more to style than most families spent on groceries. She wasn't looking at Marcus Vale when she said it. She was looking at the crowd, her crowd, making sure they understood this was a performance. The invisible janitor's son, the scholarship kid who cleaned their toilets, was about to be reminded of his place. Marcus stood frozen by the equipment shed, still holding the tennis ball that had nearly hit his little sister. Emma, 12 years old and pale from her heart condition, clutched his maintenance uniform like it could protect her from the 100 laughing students filming this humiliation. "What's wrong?" Victoria's voice carried that special cruelty only the truly wealthy could perfect. "Scared to play for a prize like me? Or do you need to check if tennis is included in your... what do they call it? Your charity scholarship?" The laughter was uncomfortable but obligatory. When Victoria Sterling made a joke, you laughed. When she decided to destroy someone, you watched. That was survival at Westbrook Academy. Marcus looked down at the spare rackets someone had shoved into his hands. 5 years since he'd held one of these. 5 years since the accident that killed his mother and shattered his tennis dreams. 5 years of being nobody, of being invisible, of keeping his past buried so Emma could have health insurance. But Emma was having trouble breathing again. The medication wasn't working. The surgery she needed cost more than he'd make in a lifetime of mopping floors. He thought about the $50,000 prize money for the charity tournament. "Fine," he said quietly, stepping onto the court. Victoria's smile widened. She had no idea she'd just awakened something that had been sleeping for 5 years. The phoenix was about to rise, and Westbrook Academy would never be the same. The autumn sun filtered through the tall windows of Westbrook Academy's pristine tennis courts, casting long shadows across the emerald surface. Victoria Sterling stood at the baseline, her perfectly styled auburn hair catching the light like burnished copper. At 17, she was everything Westbrook represented: wealth, privilege, and an almost cruel perfection that made lesser mortals wither in her presence. She adjusted her designer tennis dress, a pristine white ensemble that cost more than most families spent on groceries in a month. Around her, the cream of Westbrook's student body had gathered for the annual fall tennis exhibition, a charity event that was less about charity and more about showing off for college scouts and wealthy parents. "This is pathetic," Victoria announced, her voice carrying across the court with practiced disdain. Her opponent, Bradley Chen from the debate team, was already sweating through his Ralph Lauren polo after just 2 games. "Is there no one at this school who can give me a real match?" The crowd tittered with nervous laughter. When Victoria Sterling spoke, people listened, not because they wanted to, but because crossing her was social suicide at Westbrook. Her father owned half the commercial real estate in the city, and her mother sat on the board of 3 Ivy League universities. Victoria herself had been groomed since birth to be exceptional at everything, and tennis was no exception. A stray ball from Bradley's wild return shot sailed over the fence, landing near the equipment shed where Marcus Vale was quietly organizing the sports equipment. Nobody noticed him at first. Marcus had perfected the art of invisibility over his 3 years at Westbrook Academy. He was there on a maintenance scholarship, one of the programs the school ran to maintain its charitable status. In exchange for reduced tuition, he worked afternoons and weekends, helping the groundskeeping staff. Marcus bent to pick up the ball, his movements careful and deliberate. His second-hand uniform, a grey maintenance jumpsuit with the school's crest, hung loosely on his thin frame. His dark hair fell across his face, obscuring features that he'd learned to keep hidden. At Westbrook, being different was dangerous, being poor was worse, being both made you a ghost. But as he reached for the ball, A small figure darted past him. His little sister Emma, who wasn't supposed to be here. She was only 12, attended the local public middle school, and Marcus had told her to wait in the library while he finished his shift. But Emma, curious and restless, had wandered out to watch the tennis match. The ball Bradley hit had more power than accuracy. It rocketed off his racket and slammed into the chain-link fence mere inches from where Emma stood. She jumped back with a startled cry, her face going pale. Marcus moved without thinking, dropping the equipment bag and rushing to his sister's side. "Em, you okay?" he murmured, checking her over with practiced concern. Emma nodded, but her breathing was shallow. Her hand pressed against her chest in a way that made Marcus's blood run cold. Not now, he thought desperately, not here. The commotion had drawn attention. Victoria's gaze swept over to the fence, her perfectly shaped eyebrows arching with interest. She saw the maintenance boy. Mitchell? Morris? She'd never bothered to learn his name, fussing over some kid who didn't belong on Westbrook's grounds. "Excuse me," Victoria called out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This is a closed practice. That child shouldn't be here." The crowd turned to look. 100 pairs of eyes suddenly focused on Marcus and Emma. Marcus felt the familiar heat of humiliation creeping up his neck. He kept his head down, one arm protectively around Emma's shoulders. "Sorry," he mumbled, starting to guide Emma away. "We're leaving." But Victoria wasn't done. She'd been bored, frustrated by the lack of competition. And here was a perfect target for her restlessness. The maintenance boy with his shabby clothes and his trespassing sister. It was almost too easy. "Wait," she said, a cruel smile playing at her lips. "Aren't you going to pick up that ball?" "That is your job, isn't it?" Marcus stopped. His jaw tightened, but he turned back, walking to where the ball had rolled. As he bent to retrieve it, Victoria's voice rang out again. "You know, it's funny," she said, addressing the crowd more than Marcus. "We have all these tennis courts, all this equipment, and the only person here who seems capable of picking up a ball properly is the janitor." The laughter that followed was uncomfortable but obligatory. When Victoria made a joke, you laughed. It was survival instinct at Westbrook. Marcus straightened slowly, the tennis ball in his hand. For a moment, just a moment, something flashed in his eyes, a spark of something that made Victoria's smile falter slightly, but then it was gone, replaced by the careful blankness he'd cultivated for 3 years. "Actually," Victoria continued, warming to her theme, "why don't you show us how it's done? Come on, janitor boy, hit the ball back. Let's see if you can even hold a racket properly." "Victoria," someone in the crowd said weakly. Maybe it was her friend Madison, or one of the younger students who hadn't yet learned that challenging Victoria was pointless. "Come on, that's enough." "What?" Victoria said innocently. "I'm offering him a chance to play on courts he'll never afford to see again after graduation. I'm being generous." She looked directly at Marcus. "Unless you're too scared. I suppose cleaning toilets doesn't exactly prepare you for actual sports." Marcus's hand tightened on the tennis ball. Behind him, he heard Emma's breathing grow more labored. He needed to get her out of here, needed to get her home where her medication was. But Victoria Sterling stood between them and the exit, a predator who'd found prey. "Tell you what," Victoria said, her eyes glittering with malicious amusement. "Play me. 1 game. If by some miracle you score even a single point, I'll donate $1,000 to whatever charity you want. But when you lose, and you will lose, you have to admit in front of everyone here that you don't belong at Westbrook." The crowd gasped. Even for Victoria, this was cruel. The maintenance scholarship students were already barely tolerated. Forcing one to publicly acknowledge their inferior status was beyond the pale. But Victoria wasn't finished. She sauntered closer to the fence, her designer shoes clicking on the court surface. "Actually, let's make it more interesting. Win the game, the whole game, and I'll do something really special." She paused for dramatic effect, her smile widening. "I'll kiss you. Right here, in front of everyone. The princess and the pauper. Isn't that romantic?" The silence that followed was deafening. Someone dropped their phone, the clatter echoing across the courts. Marcus stood frozen, his face burning with humiliation. This wasn't just mockery, it was systematic destruction. Victoria was turning him into a joke, a cautionary tale that would follow him for the rest of his time at Westbrook. Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice tight with the beginning of an episode. "Can we go? Please." That small, frightened voice changed everything. Marcus looked down at his sister, his responsibility, his reason for enduring 3 years of invisibility at Westbrook. The school's health insurance for scholarship students covered families. It was the only reason he was here, suffering through the daily indignities. Emma's condition required constant monitoring, expensive medications, and the possibility of surgery that would cost more than their family would see in a lifetime. He looked back at Victoria, and something shifted in his expression. The careful mask slipped, revealing something harder underneath. Victoria, expecting tears or stammered excuses, found herself taking an involuntary step back. "Fine," Marcus said quietly. His voice was different, not the mumbled apologies she was used to hearing from scholarship students, but something steady and sure. "I'll play." The crowd erupted in whispers. Someone was already live streaming on Instagram. This was going to be social media gold. The untouchable Victoria Sterling versus the nobody maintenance boy. "Someone get him a racket," Victoria commanded, her confidence returning. This was even better than she'd hoped. Public humiliation with video evidence, the boy would probably transfer schools by Monday. A freshman nervously offered Marcus a spare racket from the equipment bag. Marcus took it, his fingers wrapping around the grip with an oddly familiar ease. He walked onto the court, his maintenance uniform and worn sneakers a stark contrast to the pristine playing surface. Victoria watched him approach, already planning her victory. She'd been playing tennis since she was 4, had a private coach who'd trained Grand Slam champions. This would be over in minutes. She'd destroy him point by point, making sure everyone understood the natural order of things at Westbrook Academy. "One game," she said, bouncing a ball with practiced ease. "First to 4 points wins, must win by 2. Standard rules. Think you can handle that, Janitor?" Marcus positioned himself at the baseline. The transformation was subtle at first, a straightening of his shoulders, a shift in his stance that spoke of muscle memory deeper than conscious thought. "Your serve," he said simply. Victoria tossed the ball high, her body coiling with practiced precision. Her serve was her signature weapon, a devastating combination of power and spin that had won her the state championship last year. She didn't hold back, putting every ounce of her strength into humiliating this nobody from the first point. The ball exploded off her racket, a yellow blur aimed at the far corner of the service box. She was already turning away, expecting to hear the satisfying thud of an unreturned serve. Instead, she heard something impossible, the sharp crack of strings meeting ball with perfect timing. Victoria spun around to see Marcus's return streaking past her, painting the baseline with geometric precision. The ball hit exactly where the line met the corner, a shot so perfect that even the line judge, a senior who'd been drafted into helping, stood frozen in shock. 15, love, someone in the crowd said weakly, as if unable to believe what they'd just witnessed. Victoria stared at Marcus, her mind struggling to process what had happened. It had to be luck. A fluke. Nobody hit returns like that without years of training, and certainly not maintenance scholarship students who spent their afternoons emptying trash cans. She grabbed another ball, her movements sharp with annoyance. This time, she aimed directly at his body, a jamming serve designed to handcuff him, but Marcus read it like he'd written it himself. He pivoted smoothly, his backhand uncoiling in a motion so fluid it looked choreographed. The ball floated back over the net with deceptive gentleness, dying just past the service line with vicious backspin. 30 love. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. Someone said, "Did you see that footwork?" Another voice, "That's not beginner's luck." Victoria felt the first tendril of real concern. She looked at Marcus across the net, seeing him properly for the first time. The slouch was gone. The boy who shuffled through hallways with his head down had been replaced by someone who moved with an athlete's economy, whose eyes tracked the ball with laser focus. "Who are you?" she breathed, the question escaping before she could stop it. Marcus didn't answer. He simply waited for her next serve, his expression unreadable. Victoria managed to win the next point on a double fault. Marcus's first serve went long, the second into the net. But it felt hollow, like she'd been given a gift she hadn't earned. For the rest of the game, she found herself on the defensive, scrambling to return shots that came back faster and more precisely placed than anything she'd faced before. He wasn't just good, he was exceptional. The maintenance uniform that had looked so shabby now seemed like a disguise, Clark Kent's glasses hiding Superman. His movement was poetry, economical, graceful, devastatingly effective. He wrong-footed her with drop shots, passed her at the net with blistering ground strokes, and served with a power that made the court seem smaller. Within 10 minutes, it was over. Game to Marcus, 4-1. The courts fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Victoria stood at the net, her perfect hair now damp with sweat, her designer outfit wrinkled from desperate lunges. She'd lost. Not just lost, been thoroughly, systematically outplayed by someone she'd considered beneath notice. Marcus walked to the net and extended his hand over it, a simple gesture of sportsmanship that somehow felt like a challenge. Victoria stared at his hand, calloused from real work, steady despite what had just happened. Shaking it would mean acknowledging the loss, admitting that the social order she'd taken for granted could be overturned by talent that didn't care about trust funds or family names. The crowd waited. Phones were raised, recording everything. This moment would be preserved forever, shared and reshared until it became Westbrook legend. Victoria's hand moved slowly as if through water and met his. The handshake was brief, professional, but in that moment, she felt the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. This wasn't the soft hand of someone who'd lived a life of privilege. This was someone who'd fought for things she'd never had to think about. "Good game," Marcus said quietly, then turned and walked off the court without looking back. He went straight to Emma, who was sitting on a bench, her face pale but her eyes bright with pride. "That was amazing," she whispered as he scooped her up. "You were like a superhero." "Come on, Em," he said softly, his voice returning to its usual quiet register. "Let's get you home." As they walked away, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a shattered Victoria Sterling, someone in the crowd finally found their voice. "Does anyone know who he really is?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, but suddenly urgent. Because Marcus Vale, the invisible maintenance boy, had just revealed himself to be something else entirely. And Victoria Sterling, standing alone on the court she'd ruled like a queen, realized she'd just been dethroned by someone she'd never bothered to see. The next morning arrived with unseasonable cold, frost coating the windows of Westbrook Academy's ancient buildings. Marcus arrived early, as always, using his maintenance key to enter through the service entrance. He'd hoped yesterday's incident would blow over, that the weekend would give people time to forget, or at least find new drama to focus on. He should have known better. The moment he entered the main hallway, conversations stopped, heads turned, phones appeared, not even trying to be subtle about recording him. Someone had spray-painted Tennis King on his maintenance locker, though whether it was meant as mockery or tribute was unclear. Marcus kept his head down and walked faster, but he could hear the whispers following him like a wave. That's him, the one who destroyed Victoria. I heard he was secretly trained by some famous coach. My dad says he recognized the serving motion. It's distinctive, like someone famous. Victoria hasn't posted on Instagram since yesterday. She always posts. Marcus made it to the janitor's closet, his unofficial office, where he stored supplies and occasionally ate lunch when the cafeteria felt too hostile. He closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. 3 years of careful invisibility destroyed in 10 minutes, all because Victoria Sterling had been bored. His phone buzzed. Emma had texted, "Feeling better today. Did you really win? Kids at my school are talking about some video." Before he could respond, there was a knock on the door. Marcus considered ignoring it, but the knocking persisted. Finally, he opened it to find someone unexpected. Oliver Chang, captain of the varsity tennis team and one of the few genuinely decent people in Westbrook's upper social strata. "Hey," Oliver said, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Mind if I come in?" Marcus stepped aside, too surprised to refuse. Oliver entered the small space, taking in the mops, buckets and industrial cleaning supplies with curious eyes. He'd probably never been in this part of the school before. "That was incredible yesterday," Oliver said without preamble. "I've been playing tennis since I was 5, and I've never seen anyone move like that. The way you read Victoria's serves, your court positioning, it was professional level." "It was just luck," Marcus said automatically. Oliver snorted. "Right. Luck doesn't give you a topspin backhand like that. Look, I'm not here to out you or whatever. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "There's someone I think you should meet. A journalist, but not like a gossip columnist or anything. He covers sports, real sports. He was at a match in Denver about 5 years ago, saw this kid play. 15 years old, they called him the Phoenix because he came out of nowhere and just burned through the rankings." Marcus's blood turned cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The kid's name was Marcus Valdez," Oliver continued, watching Marcus's face carefully. "He was headed for the junior championships, maybe even the pros." Then he just vanished. No explanation, no forwarding address. Some people said family troubles, others said injury, but nobody really knew. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because that journalist, Tom Harrison, is my uncle. And he's convinced you're that kid. He saw the video from yesterday. Everyone has. It's gotten like 50,000 views already. He recognized your serve, said it was unmistakable. The way you toss the ball slightly behind your head, the knee bend, the follow-through, it's apparently very distinctive." Marcus sank onto an overturned bucket, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. 5 years of hiding, of being nobody, and one stupid challenge from a bored rich girl had undone everything. "What do you want?" he asked tiredly. "Nothing," Oliver said, surprising him. "I mean, my uncle wants an interview, but that's his deal. I just wanted to warn you. This is going to get bigger. Victoria's dad is already asking questions, trying to figure out who embarrassed his daughter. And there are scouts who watch these viral videos, looking for talent. You're not going to be able to hide much longer." Before Marcus could respond, the door burst open. Victoria Sterling stood there, looking nothing like her usual polished self. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her uniform slightly wrinkled, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. "Out!" she said to Oliver, her voice brooking no argument. Oliver looked between them, seemed about to protest, then thought better of it. "Think about what I said," he told Marcus, then slipped past Victoria and disappeared down the hallway. Victoria closed the door and leaned against it. For a long moment they just looked at each other, the Queen and the Ghost, separated by 3 feet of space and an ocean of circumstance. "You owe me a kiss," she said finally. Marcus blinked. Of all the things he'd expected her to say, That wasn't even on the list. What? The bet, she said, her voice strangely calm. I lost. The terms were clear, so either you kiss me, or you admit the whole thing was a setup, that you hustled me. I didn't hustle anyone, Marcus said carefully. You challenged me. I just played. Nobody just plays like that, Victoria shot back, some heat entering her voice. You've had professional training. Years of it. So either you're exactly what you appear to be, a maintenance boy who somehow magically plays tennis like a future pro, or you're a liar who's been pretending to be something you're not. We're all pretending to be something, Marcus said quietly. You pretend to be untouchable. I pretend to be invisible. The only difference is, my pretense doesn't hurt anyone. Victoria flinched as if he'd slapped her. I don't. Yes, you do, Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. But something about being exposed, about having his carefully constructed walls torn down, made him reckless. You hurt people every day. Little comments, little jokes, little reminders that they don't belong. You probably don't even notice anymore. It's just who you are. And who are you? Victoria demanded. Because the background check my father ran says Marcus Vale didn't exist before 3 years ago. No school records, no previous addresses, no social media history. It's like you appeared out of thin air just in time to start at Westbrook. Marcus stood slowly, using his height advantage for once. Victoria had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, and something about the shift in perspective changed the dynamic between them. I'm someone who had everything and lost it, he said simply. I'm someone who chose family over fame, necessity over dreams. I'm someone who cleans your classrooms and maintains your perfect little world because it's the only way to keep my sister alive. That's who I am. Victoria's brow furrowed. Your sister? That kid yesterday? Emma, Marcus said, his voice softening at her name. She has a heart condition, congenital, getting worse. She needs surgery, probably within the year. Surgery we can't afford, from a specialist we can't pay. The only reason she has any treatment at all is because Westbrook's scholarship program includes family health coverage. The fight seemed to drain out of Victoria. She slumped against the door, looking suddenly very young and very lost. I didn't know. Why would you? When have you ever looked at me long enough to know anything? I'm looking now, she said quietly. And when Marcus met her eyes, he was surprised to find them glistening with unshed tears. I'm sorry. For yesterday, for the bet, for everything. Marcus studied her for a long moment, trying to reconcile this vulnerable girl with the Ice Queen who'd ruled Westbrook's social scene with an iron fist. Why are you really here, Victoria? She laughed, but it was bitter, self-mocking, because my perfect little world is crumbling. My father's furious that I lost so publicly. The videos everywhere. I'm a meme now, apparently. Rich girl gets schooled is trending. My mother called from Milan to tell me I'm an embarrassment to the family name. And the cherry on top? Stanford called this morning. They're reassessing my early admission offer because of concerns about character and sportsmanship. Despite everything, Marcus felt a twist of sympathy. He knew what it was like to lose everything, to watch your carefully planned future evaporate. I'm sorry. Don't be, Victoria said, straightening. I deserved it. I was cruel and petty, and I picked on you because I could, because I was bored and frustrated and you were an easy target. She paused, then added quietly, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned that. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did was wrong. They stood in silence for a moment, two teenagers from different worlds brought together by a tennis match and its aftermath. Then Victoria pushed off from the door. For what it's worth, she said as she reached for the handle, you play beautifully, like you were born to it. I've never seen anything like it. I was, Marcus said quietly. Born to it, I mean. My mother was a tennis coach. She started teaching me when I was 3. Said I had the hands for it, the eye. She was right. Victoria paused. Was. Car accident, 5 years ago. That's when everything changed. Victoria turned back to face him fully. Is that when you became Marcus Vale? He nodded slowly. Marcus Valdez died in that accident. At least the version of him that mattered. The rising star, the future champion. What survived was just this. He gestured at himself. The maintenance uniform, the closet full of cleaning supplies. But yesterday was a mistake, Marcus said firmly. Yesterday was letting the ghost out for 10 minutes. It won't happen again. Victoria looked like she wanted to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. She nodded slowly. The secret's safe with me. I owe you that much. She opened the door, then paused. The kiss, she said without turning around. The bet. Forget about it, Marcus said. It was a stupid bet made in a cruel moment. Let's both pretend it never happened. Victoria nodded and slipped out, leaving Marcus alone with his mops and memories. But even as he tried to return to his routine, he could feel the walls he'd built beginning to crack. Oliver's uncle, the viral video, Victoria's father's background check. His past was catching up, and he wasn't sure he could outrun it this time. His phone buzzed. Emma again. Marcus, are you famous now? Someone at school showed me the video. You looked like a superhero. Mom would be so proud. Marcus stared at the text, his throat tight. Mom would be proud. Would she? She dreamed of seeing him at Wimbledon, had spent every penny she could spare on coaching and equipment. She died never knowing he'd given it all up. Another buzz. This time, an unknown number. Mr. Valdez, my name is Tom Harrison from Sports Weekly. I believe we have much to discuss. Your story deserves to be told. Please call me. Marcus deleted the message, but he knew it wouldn't be the last. The ghost was out of the bottle, and ghosts, he was learning, were impossible to bury twice. The week that followed was an exercise in carefully controlled chaos. Marcus had hoped the story would die down, but the internet had other plans. The video, now titled Cinderella Story, Janitor Destroys Mean Girl at Tennis, had crossed 100,000 views. Someone had set it to music. There were reaction videos, analysis videos, and even a few conspiracy theories about his true identity. At Westbrook, Marcus found himself in a strange liminal space. He wasn't quite accepted. He was still the scholarship kid, still the maintenance boy, but he was no longer invisible. People nodded at him in the hallways. Some even said hello. A few of the tennis team members tried to recruit him, though he politely declined every offer. Victoria, meanwhile, had undergone her own transformation. The queen bee, who'd ruled through fear and casual cruelty, seemed to have abdicated her throne. She still dressed impeccably, still carried herself with that distinctive, sterling confidence, but something fundamental had changed. She no longer held court in the cafeteria. She no longer delivered cutting remarks disguised as compliments. She was quieter, more observant, as if seeing Westbrook clearly for the first time. It was Thursday afternoon when their worlds collided again. Marcus was in the library, using his break to help Emma with her homework via video call. She'd been having more episodes lately, her breathing becoming labored with less and less exertion. The medication wasn't working as well anymore, and the doctor's warnings were becoming more urgent. I don't understand this math problem, Emma was saying, her face pixelated on his phone screen. Why do I need to know about parabolas anyway? Because they're everywhere, Marcus said patiently. The path of a tennis ball, for instance. When you hit it, it follows a parabolic arc. Everything's tennis with you lately, Emma teased. Ever since you became famous. I'm not famous, Em. The kids at school think you are. Sarah Martinez wants your autograph. Before Marcus could respond, a shadow fell across his table. He looked up to find Victoria standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I can come back." "It's okay," Emma's voice piped up from the phone. "Is that her?" The pretty girl from the video. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Emma." "Hi." Emma waved at the screen. "I'm Emma. You're Victoria, right? The one who lost to my brother?" Victoria's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "That's me. The loser." "You're not a loser," Emma said seriously. "You were really good. Marcus is just better. He used to be ranked, you know, number 3 in the country for his age group." "Emma," Marcus warned. "What?" "It's true." Emma's face was earnest on the screen. "Mom saved all the newspaper clippings. I still have them." Victoria looked at Marcus with new interest. "Number 3 nationally?" "It was a long time ago," Marcus said, reaching for his phone. "Em, I have to go. I'll call you tonight, okay? Okay, bye, Marcus. Bye, Victoria." The call ended, leaving Marcus and Victoria in awkward silence. She sat down across from him without asking, a move that would have seemed imperious a week ago, but now just seemed tired. "Number 3, she repeated. "You weren't just good. You were elite." "Was," Marcus emphasized. "Past tense." "What happened?" "Really happened. Not the vague answers you give everyone else." Marcus looked around the library. It was mostly empty, just a few students studying in distant corners. He shouldn't tell her. She was still Victoria Sterling, still the enemy in many ways, but something about the genuine curiosity in her voice, the absence of her usual sharp edges, made him want to answer. "Car accident," he said quietly. "Drunk driver ran a red light. My mom died instantly. I broke my leg in 3 places, tore ligaments in my shoulder. Emma was in the back seat. The impact damaged her heart. She'd always had a minor condition, but the trauma made it critical." Victoria was silent, letting him continue at his own pace. "I was in physical therapy for a year. Could have come back maybe if I'd pushed through it. But Emma needed surgeries, medications, constant care. Our dad had left years earlier. There was no one else. So I made a choice." He shrugged, trying for casual and missing by miles. "Tennis or my sister wasn't really a choice at all." "The scholarship program," Victoria said, understanding dawning. "The health coverage. Only reason we survived. I legally changed our last name, created new identities, couldn't risk someone connecting us to the old life, to the insurance claims and the lawsuits and the media coverage. We needed to disappear, start over somewhere no one would look for a tennis prodigy. Westbrook was perfect, so elite that nobody would expect to find Marcus Valdez cleaning their floors. Until I ruined it. You didn't know." "I didn't care," Victoria corrected. "That's worse. I saw you as furniture, I guess, part of the background. Not a real person with a real life and real problems." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of confession and revelation settling between them. "My father wants to sue you," Victoria said suddenly. Marcus's head snapped up. "What? For fraud or something? He's convinced you hustled me, that it was some elaborate con. He's had 3 different lawyers look into it." She met his eyes. "I told him if he did, I'd tell the Stanford Admissions Board about his tax evasion. That shut him up." Marcus stared at her. "You blackmailed your own father?" "Technically, it's just leverage," Victoria said with a ghost of her old smile. "I learned from the best." "Why would you do that?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, fidgeting with her designer bracelet. "Because what you said was true. About me hurting people, about not even noticing anymore. I've been thinking about it all week, and you're right. I'm not a good person, Marcus. People can change, can they?" Because I've been trying to be different this week, and it's like nobody knows what to do with me. My friends think I'm having a breakdown. The people I used to torment don't trust the change, and I don't blame them. Why should they believe I'm anything other than what I've always been? Marcus studied her, this girl who'd seemed so untouchable just a week ago. Now she looked lost, adrift in a sea of her own making. Change is hard. It's also slow. You can't undo years of behavior in a week. Speaking from experience. Different kind of change, but yeah, becoming nobody after being somebody. It took time. Learning to be invisible, to keep my head down, to not react when people treated me like I was worthless. Every instinct screamed to fight back, to show them who I really was. But I couldn't. Emma needed me to be nobody. And now? Now I don't know, Marcus admitted. The secret's out, or at least part of it. Your father's not the only one asking questions. There are reporters calling the school. Someone from ESPN left a message with the principal. And he paused, debating whether to tell her. And, Victoria prompted, there's a surgeon. Dr. Patricia Nguyen. She's pioneering a new technique for Emma's type of heart condition. She saw the video, recognized my name from the old days. She's a tennis fan, apparently. She called yesterday, said she remembered reading about the accident, about Emma. She wants to help. Victoria's eyes widened. That's amazing. She could save Emma. For a price I can't afford. Even with insurance, even with every penny I've saved, it's not enough. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So go back to tennis. With your skill, you could get sponsors, prize money. With what time? Emma needs me. She can't be alone, especially now when she's getting worse. And I'm so far behind. 5 years out of competitive play. The game's evolved and I've been mopping floors. Victoria stood abruptly. Come on. What? Come with me, right now. I have to finish my shift. Skip it. This is more important. Something in her tone made Marcus stand. Victoria was already walking, expecting him to follow, and despite every warning bell in his head, he did. She led him through Westbrook's marble hallways, past the trophy cases and oil paintings of distinguished alumni, to a part of the school he'd never entered, the Sterling Wing, named after Victoria's grandfather, who donated it 20 years ago. At the end of a carpeted hallway was a door marked Private. Victoria produced a key and opened it, revealing a regulation-size indoor tennis court. It was pristine, with perfect lighting and climate control, the kind of private facility that most people only saw in magazines. My father had this built for me when I was 12, Victoria said, walking onto the court. I've been training here with private coaches for 5 years, thousands of hours, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you destroyed me in 10 minutes. Victoria, shut up and listen, she said, but not unkindly. I have a proposition. You need money for Emma's surgery. I need purpose, I guess, something to make up for years of being terrible. So here's the deal. Train here, every day after school. I'll pay for everything, equipment, coaching if you want it, tournament entry fees, travel, whatever you need. Marcus shook his head. I can't take your money. You're not taking anything. This is a business arrangement. You win tournaments, you get prize money, you save your sister. I get to be part of something good for once, maybe salvage what's left of my reputation. Everyone wins. Why would you do this? Victoria picked up a racket from a gold-plated rack on the wall. Because I've had every advantage in life, and I use them to make other people miserable. Because you've had every disadvantage, and you still chose to sacrifice everything for someone you love. Because maybe, if I help save your sister, it'll balance out some of the harm I've done. She tossed him a racket, a professional-grade Wilson that probably cost more than he made in a month. And because I want to learn how to play like you do, how to be better. Marcus caught the racket, his fingers automatically finding the proper grip. The weight was perfect, the balance sublime. It felt like coming home after years in exile. "One condition," he said. "Name it." "Emma gets to watch. When she's feeling up to it. She gets to sit in here and watch me practice. She loves tennis, even though she can't play. It would mean everything to her." Victoria's expression softened. Of course. She can come whenever she wants. Marcus bounced the racket in his hand, testing its feel. 5 years of suppressed muscle memory surged back, his body remembering what his mind had tried to forget. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's do this." Victoria smiled, not her usual sharp, predatory smile, but something genuine and almost vulnerable. "Let's start now. Show me that serve, the one with the weird toss that Tom Harrison recognized." Marcus walked to the baseline, and for the first time in 5 years, allowed himself to remember what it felt like to belong on a tennis court. He tossed the ball, slightly behind his head just as his mother had taught him, and unleashed a serve that cracked like thunder in the enclosed space. The ball hit the exact corner of the service box, untouchable and perfect. Victoria whistled low. "Okay, I see why Mum's newspaper clippings called you the Phoenix." "You're about to rise from the ashes, Marcus Valdez." "Vale," he corrected. "I'm still Marcus Vale at school, the invisible maintenance boy." "Not anymore," Victoria said, walking to the other side of the court. "Now you're my secret weapon, and together we're going to save your sister." As Marcus prepared to serve again, he thought about Emma, about the surgery that could save her life, about the unexpected ally he'd found in his former tormentor. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges he couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in 5 years he had hope. And hope, he was learning, could be more powerful than any serve. The first tournament was a disaster. Not because Marcus played poorly, quite the opposite. The problem was that he played too well, too fast, drawing exactly the kind of attention they'd been trying to avoid. It was a small regional tournament in Hartford, the kind that usually only drew family members and the occasional college scout. Victoria had entered him under his legal name, Marcus Vale, hoping the distance from Westbrook and the low profile of the event would let him ease back into competitive play. She'd miscalculated. Marcus destroyed his first opponent 6-0, 6-1 in less than 40 minutes. The second match was even shorter. By the quarterfinals, a small crowd had gathered, phones out, whispers spreading through the venue like wildfire. Who was this unknown player with the devastating serve and impossible returns? "We should withdraw," Marcus said between matches, pulling Victoria aside. They were in a corner of the players' lounge, trying to avoid the growing number of curious stares. "You're 1 match away from the finals," Victoria protested. "The prize money isn't worth exposure. Someone's going to recognize me, or worse, recognize my style of play. That journalist Harrison is still sniffing around. If he connects Marcus Vale to this tournament..." Victoria bit her lip. A gesture he'd learned meant she was thinking hard. In the 2 weeks since they'd started training together, he'd begun to read her tells, the way she tilted her head when she was about to propose something risky, the way her fingers drummed against her leg when she was impatient. "Okay," she said finally, "but we need a better plan. You can't stay hidden forever, and Emma needs that surgery sooner rather than later." She was right, and they both knew it. Emma's latest test results had been concerning. Dr. Nguyen had reviewed them and recommended surgery within 6 months, 8 at the absolute outside. The cost, $350,000, not including follow-up care, might as well have been $1 billion for all Marcus's ability to pay it. "I'll forfeit the semi-final," Marcus decided. "Cite an injury." Victoria looked like she wanted to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. They'd developed an odd partnership over their training sessions. She pushed him to take risks. He reminded her of the stakes. It was a balance that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. As they left the venue, Marcus noticed a man in a blue windbreaker taking photos, not of the matches, but of him specifically. The man looked familiar, but Marcus couldn't place him. It wasn't until 3 days later that he understood why. Marcus was in the Sterling Wing's private court, running drills with Victoria. She'd improved dramatically under his unofficial tutelage, her natural talent finally paired with proper technique. They were in the middle of a particularly intense rally when the door opened. Both of them stopped, the ball bouncing forgotten across the court. The man in the doorway was tall, athletic despite being in his 50s, with silver hair and eyes that matched Victoria's. Richard Sterling had found them. "Daddy!" Victoria said, her voice carefully neutral. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Richard Sterling replied, his gaze fixed on Marcus, "though I suspect I already know. You've been training him, the maintenance boy who humiliated you." "His name is Marcus," Victoria said, stepping slightly forward as if to shield him, "and he didn't humiliate me. He beat me fairly." "Fairly?" Richard's laugh was cold. "A hustler pretending to be a janitor? That's fair?" He walked onto the court, his expensive shoes clicking against the surface. "Mr. Vale, or should I say, Mr. Valdez." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No? Then you won't mind explaining why someone matching your exact description just dominated a tournament in Hartford? Or why my investigators found sealed juvenile records in Denver for one Marcus Valdez, teenage tennis prodigy whose family disappeared after a fatal car accident 5 years ago?" "Daddy, stop!" Victoria said, real alarm in her voice now. But Richard Sterling was just getting started. He pulled out his phone, showing them a photo. The man in the blue windbreaker at the tournament. "My private investigator, very thorough. He found some interesting things, like the fact that you've been lying about your identity to attend Westbrook. That's fraud, Mr. Valdez, the kind that gets people arrested, that gets scholarships revoked, that gets little sister's health insurance cancelled." And the threat hung in the air like poison gas. Marcus felt his hands clench into fists, but Victoria grabbed his arm. "What do you want?" she asked her father. Richard smiled, the expression making him look like a shark who'd scented blood. "What I've always wanted. For you to stop this ridiculous rebellion and remember who you are. You're a Sterling, Victoria, not some charity worker playing with her pet project." "He's not a project, isn't he? The poor boy you're trying to save to make yourself feel better about being mean to some losers. Very noble, sweetheart, but ultimately pointless." He turned to Marcus. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from my daughter. You're going to stop playing tennis. You're going to go back to being invisible. In exchange, I won't expose your fraud, and your sister keeps her health insurance." "You can't do that," Victoria said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. They all knew Richard Sterling had that power and more. "I can and I will. Unless..." Richard paused, savoring the moment. "There is one alternative." "What?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. "You play for me. Exclusively. I enter you in tournaments under my sponsorship. You win, and the prize money goes toward your sister's medical bills, after my management fee, of course. Say 60%. 60%? Victoria gasped. "That's theft." "It's business," Richard corrected, "and it's generous considering I could simply destroy him instead. Think about it, Mr. Valdez. You could keep playing, earn money for your sister, and maintain your little charade at Westbrook. All you have to do is become my employee." Marcus looked at Victoria, seeing his own trapped feeling reflected in her eyes. Her father had them cornered, and they all knew it. "I need time to think," Marcus said. "You have 24 hours, Richard said, turning to leave. Then he paused at the door. "Oh, and Victoria? You're done here. No more training with him, no more contact at all. I've already informed Stanford that your early admission has been reinstated, contingent on your improved behavior. Don't make me revoke it again." The door closed behind him with a decisive click. Victoria sank onto a bench, her composed facade finally cracking. "I'm so sorry. I never thought I didn't know he was investigating you." "It's not your fault," Marcus said, though his mind was racing through implications and possibilities. "He's right, though. I am a fraud. I've been lying since I got here. To protect your sister. That's not fraud, it's survival. The courts won't see it that way." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Richard Sterling's ultimatum pressing down on them. Finally, Victoria spoke. "Take the deal." Marcus looked at her in surprise. "What?" "Take it. Play for him. 60% of something is better than 100% of nothing, and at least you'll be playing again, building your ranking, getting noticed. Once you're established, once Emma is safe, you can break free. Your father doesn't strike me as someone who lets people break free." Victoria's smile was bitter. "No, he doesn't. But you're not most people. You're the phoenix, remember? You've already risen from the ashes once." Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. It was Emma's school. "Mr. Vale, your sister collapsed during gym class. The ambulance is taking her to Westbrook General." The next hours blurred together in a nightmare of white walls and beeping machines. Marcus sat by Emma's bedside, holding her small hand while she slept off the sedatives. Her heart had gone into arrhythmia during a simple game of dodgeball. If the school nurse hadn't been trained in pediatric cardiac events, if the ambulance hadn't arrived quickly, Dr. Nguyen arrived at midnight, having driven 2 hours after Marcus's desperate call. She reviewed Emma's charts with an increasingly grim expression. "We're out of time," she said simply. "Her heart is decompensating faster than expected. We need to operate within the month, or—" She didn't need to finish. Marcus knew what "or" meant. "I don't have the money," he said, the words like glass in his throat. "I know." Dr. Nguyen sat down across from him, her expression kind but frank. "But I also know who you used to be." The tennis world is small, Marcus. Word gets around. There are people who remember you, who would help if they knew you needed it. I can't go public. There are reasons. I'm not telling you to go public. I'm telling you that your sister is dying and you have a gift that could save her. Whatever reasons you have for hiding, ask yourself if they're worth her life. After Dr. Nguyen left, Marcus sat alone in the darkness, watching Emma's chest rise and fall. She looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile. He thought about his mother, about the dreams she'd had for him, about the promise he'd made at her graveside to protect Emma no matter what. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mr. Valdez, I've reconsidered my offer. 30% management fee, and I'll advance you $50,000 toward your sister's surgery immediately. You have 1 hour to decide. -R. Sterling." Marcus looked at Emma, at the machines keeping track of her failing heart, at the future that was slipping away with every labored breath. He texted back, "Deal." But as he hit send, another text arrived, this one from Victoria. "Don't trust him. Meet me at the court at dawn. I have another idea." Marcus stared at both messages, torn between the devil's bargain he'd just accepted and the slim hope that Victoria Sterling, the girl who'd started all of this with a cruel joke, might somehow have a better answer. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about tennis and heroes and her big brother who could do anything. Marcus put his head in his hands and did something he hadn't done since his mother died. He cried. Dawn came slowly to Westbrook Academy, painting the Sterling Wing's windows gold and amber. Marcus arrived to find Victoria already there, but she wasn't alone. Oliver Chang stood beside her, along with someone Marcus recognized but had never met. Tom Harrison, the sports journalist who'd been pursuing the story. "Before you run," Victoria said quickly, seeing Marcus tense, "just listen. Please." Marcus stayed by the door, ready to bolt. You brought a reporter. After everything. I brought someone who can help, Victoria corrected. Tell him, Tom. Tom Harrison stepped forward. He was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of earnest energy that marked true sports enthusiasts rather than scandal seekers. I know who you are, Tom said simply. I've known since the first video surfaced, Marcus Valdez, the Phoenix of Denver. I was there, you know. At your last match before you disappeared, you were magnificent. That person doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't he? Tom pulled out a tablet showing Marcus a video. It was from Hartford, his semi-final match before he'd withdrawn. This is you 3 days ago. Same serve, same footwork, same impossible returns. The Phoenix never died, Marcus. You just caged him. Get to the point, Marcus said, exhaustion making him blunt. The point is, I'm not here for a scandal. I'm here for a story of redemption. And more importantly, I'm here representing someone who wants to sponsor your return to professional tennis. Marcus laughed bitterly. I already have a sponsor, Victoria's father. My father is a parasite, Victoria said flatly. He'll bleed you dry and discard you the moment you're no longer useful. Tom's offer is different. Tom nodded. Grace Chen, you remember her? Marcus's breath caught. Grace Chen had been a tennis legend, winner of 7 Grand Slams before retiring at 28 to start a foundation for underprivileged athletes. She remembers you, Tom continued. She was at the Junior Championships 5 years ago, scouting for her foundation. She says you were the most naturally talented player she'd ever seen at that age. When you disappeared, she tried to find you, but the trail went cold. What does she want? To give you a second chance. Full sponsorship, no strings attached. She'll cover Emma's surgery immediately, plus all training costs, equipment, travel, and a living stipend. In return, you play under her foundation's banner and commit to mentoring 3 junior players from underprivileged backgrounds. It sounded too good to be true, which in Marcus's experience meant it probably was. What's the catch? You have to come public, Oliver said quietly. The whole story, the accident, your mother, Emma's condition, why you've been hiding. Grace believes in transparency. She wants people to understand that sometimes heroes fall, but they can rise again. No. The word came out sharp, definitive. Emma doesn't need that attention. She's been through enough. Has she? Victoria asked. Because from what I've seen, Emma is proud of you. She wants the world to know her brother is special. You're not protecting her by hiding, Marcus. You're protecting yourself. The words stung because they held truth. Marcus had told himself everything was for Emma, but was part of it just his own fear. Fear of returning to a world that had been ripped away, fear of failing, fear of not living up to what he'd once been. Your father, Marcus started. Already signed the contract, Victoria interrupted. You accepted his deal, right? Well, I know my father. That contract has loopholes you could drive a truck through. I've seen the template he uses. There's a performance clause. If you don't place in the top 3 in your first tournament under his management, he can terminate immediately and demand repayment of any advances. But I can place top 3, not in the tournament he's entering you in. Victoria pulled out her phone, showing him a registration page. The New England Championships, next month. He's registered you in the open division, not the amateur. You'll be playing against current professionals, some ranked in the top 100 nationally. It's designed to make you fail. Marcus felt the trap closing around him. So either way, I lose. Not necessarily, Tom said. Grace's offer stands regardless. Take it, and she'll handle Richard Sterling. She has lawyers who eat contracts like his for breakfast. And if Sterling retaliates, if he goes after Emma's insurance, then we go public with everything, Victoria said, and there was steel in her voice. including my father's attempt to blackmail a 17-year-old boy with his 6 sisters' health care. See how that plays in the media he cares so much about." Marcus looked at the 3 of them. Victoria, the former mean girl turned unlikely ally. Oliver, the golden boy who'd chosen to help when he could have stayed silent. And Tom, the journalist who wanted to tell stories that mattered instead of just ones that sold. "I need to talk to Emma first," he said finally. "Of course," Tom said, handing him a business card. "Grace is flying in tonight. She'd like to meet you both if you're willing. No pressure, no cameras, just a conversation about possibilities." As they prepared to leave, Victoria hung back. "Why?" Marcus asked her. "Why go against your father for this?" She was quiet for a moment, then met his eyes. "Because for 17 years, I've been exactly who he raised me to be. Cold, calculating, cruel. I'm good at it, too good. But that day on the tennis court when you beat me, something cracked. Not just my pride, but this shell I'd built. And these past weeks, training with you, seeing you with Emma, understanding what real strength looks like." She paused, searching for words. "I don't want to be him, Marcus. I don't want to be someone who sees people as pieces to move on a board. I want to be someone who helps heroes instead of crushing them. I'm not a hero. Tell that to Emma." Victoria smiled, sad but genuine. "Besides, maybe heroes aren't people who never fall. Maybe they're people who get back up, even when every bone in their body is broken." She left before Marcus could respond, but her words echoed in the empty court. He thought about his mother, about the dreams they'd shared, about the future that had been stolen by a drunk driver on a random Tuesday night. He thought about Emma, fighting for every breath, deserving so much more than the hand she'd been dealt. And he thought about himself, not Marcus Vale, the invisible janitor, not Marcus Valdez, the fallen prodigy, but just Marcus, a 17-year-old who'd been carrying the weight of the world on shoulders that were never meant to bear it alone. That evening, Grace Chen arrived at Westbrook General. She wasn't what Marcus expected. Where Richard Sterling had been all sharp edges and calculated threat, Grace was warm, direct, and surprisingly small for someone who dominated professional tennis for a decade. She wore jeans and a Boston College sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "You look like your mother," were her first words to Marcus. He blinked, startled. "You knew her?" "Elena coached me for a summer when I was 15, best 2 months of training I ever had. She had this way of seeing not just who you were as a player, but who you could become." Grace sat down next to Emma's bed, where the girl was awake but weak, watching with curious eyes. "You must be Emma. Your brother tells me you love tennis." "I can't play," Emma said softly. "My heart." "Neither could I once," Grace said, pulling up her sleeve to reveal a long surgical scar. "Car accident when I was 19. They said I'd never play professionally again. Took me 2 years and 4 surgeries, but I came back to win Wimbledon." She looked at Emma seriously. "Bodies can be fixed, Emma. It's spirits that are harder to heal. From what I hear, yours is unbreakable." Emma smiled, the first real smile Marcus had seen from her in days. "Did you really know our mom?" "I did. She was brilliant. Had this serve that looked impossible until she taught you the physics behind it. Your brother has the same serve. It's how I knew who he was the moment I saw that first video." Grace turned to Marcus. "I'm not here to pressure you. I'm here to make an offer. Tom told you the basics, but I wanted to add something. Your mother was supposed to join my coaching staff the year she died. We had plans, a tennis academy for kids who couldn't afford traditional training. Her accident didn't just rob the world of a beautiful person, it robbed countless kids of the chance to learn from her." She pulled out a folder. "This is what I'm proposing. Not just sponsorship, but partnership. You play, yes, but you also help me build what your mother and I dreamed of. The Elena Valdez Tennis Academy. Emma gets her surgery immediately. Dr. Nguyen is actually a friend. We've already discussed it. You get full support to return to competitive play. And together we create something that would make your mother proud." Marcus felt tears threatening. It was everything he could have dreamed of, but Richard Sterling has a contract, which is void, Grace said calmly. "I had my lawyers review it this afternoon. He had you sign while your sister was in medical distress without representation while you were still a minor. It's textbook coercion. He tries to enforce it. We'll bury him in litigation that will make what happened to Victoria look like a love tap. He'll come after us other ways. Let him try." Grace's smile was sharp. "I've dealt with bigger bullies than Richard Sterling. Besides, I think Victoria has some ideas about how to handle her father. She's quite remarkable, actually. Reminds me of myself at that age. All that potential twisted into the wrong shape by bad parenting." "You've talked to Victoria?" "She called me. Told me everything. That took courage, going against her father for someone he tried to destroy. She also mentioned something about a kiss you owe her." Marcus flushed red. "That was just a stupid bet." "Was it?" Grace asked, amused. "Because from what I saw on that video, there was something more than competition between you two. Chemistry, maybe? It's complicated. The best things usually are." Grace stood. "Think about my offer. Talk to Emma, really talk to her. Then decide, not what's safe, not what's easy, but what's right. What would make your mother proud?" She left her folder on the bedside table. After she was gone, Emma reached for Marcus's hand. "Mum would want you to play," she said quietly. "She wouldn't want you to give up everything for me." "You are everything, Em." "No," Emma said with surprising firmness. "I'm your sister, and I love you. And you've saved my life over and over. But I'm not your whole life. And hiding who you are, it's killing you as much as my heart is killing me." Marcus squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of decision. Outside, the sun was setting over Westbrook, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere, Richard Sterling was probably plotting his next move. Somewhere, Victoria was standing up to a father who'd shaped her in his own cold image. And somewhere, the ghost of Eleanor Valdez was waiting to see if her son would finally step back into the light. "Okay," Marcus whispered, to Emma, to Grace's offer, to the future that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. "Let's do it." Emma smiled, and for a moment her face held all the light in the world. The story broke on a Tuesday. Tom Harrison had crafted it carefully. Not a scandal or exposé, but a human interest piece titled "The Phoenix Rises, a Story of Love, Loss, and Tennis." It ran simultaneously in Sports Weekly, the Boston Globe, and online, accompanied by exclusive photos Tom had taken during Marcus's training sessions. Marcus had expected chaos. What he got was a flood. Within hours, the story went viral, not just in tennis circles, but everywhere. The narrative was irresistible. Teenage tennis prodigy loses everything, sacrifices his dreams for his dying sister, works as a janitor to keep her alive, then gets discovered in a cruel prank that becomes a redemption story. Hollywood couldn't have written it better. The response was overwhelming. GoFundMe pages sprouted without Marcus's knowledge, raising money for Emma's surgery. Professional tennis players tweeted their support. Roger Federer posted a video saying he remembered watching Marcus play as a junior and couldn't wait to see him back on the court. But it was the smaller responses that hit hardest. Parents of sick children sharing their own stories of sacrifice. Former athletes who'd had to walk away from their dreams. Teenagers from poor families who saw themselves in Marcus's struggle. The story had touched something universal, something that went beyond tennis. At Westbrook Academy, Marcus walked through the front entrance for the first time. No more service doors, no more trying to be invisible. The transformation was surreal. Students who'd never acknowledged his existence suddenly wanted to talk to him. Teachers who'd looked through him now stopped him in hallways to offer congratulations. The maintenance staff, his former colleagues, greeted him with a mixture of pride and bewilderment. "Always knew you were different," said George, the head custodian, slapping Marcus on the back. "Way you carried yourself. Like you were apologizing for taking up space. Made sense when you were hiding. Now, stand tall, kid." But not everyone was celebrating. Richard Sterling's response was swift and vicious. He filed an injunction claiming breach of contract, demanded immediate repayment of the $50,000 advance, and threatened criminal charges for fraud. He also pulled Victoria out of Westbrook, announcing she would be completing her senior year at a Swiss boarding school. The last part hit Marcus harder than any legal threat. He hadn't seen Victoria since the morning at the court. She'd texted once, "I'm sorry, he's sending me away. Win everything," before her phone went dark. Oliver told him later that the confrontation between Victoria and her father had been explosive. She'd refused to go to Switzerland. He'd threatened to cut her off entirely. She'd threatened to expose his insider trading to the SEC. It ended with Richard Sterling doing something he'd never done before. He'd backed down, partially. Victoria could stay in Boston, but she was forbidden from any contact with Marcus or involvement with tennis. "She's essentially under house arrest," Oliver explained. "Private tutors, no phone, no internet. Her dad's trying to break her." "He doesn't know his daughter very well," Marcus said, remembering the steel in Victoria's voice when she'd stood up to her father. The legal battle with Richard Sterling was handled by Grace Chen's team with surgical precision. They countersued for coercion, emotional distress, and violation of labor laws regarding minor employees. They subpoenaed records showing Richard's history of exploitative contracts with young athletes. They threatened to depose every board member at Sterling Industries about their CEO's management style. Within a week, Richard Sterling withdrew all claims and issued a terse statement about miscommunication and wishing Mr. Valdez well in his future endeavors. Emma's surgery was scheduled for the following Monday. The night before, Marcus sat with her in her hospital room. She'd been moved to a private suite, courtesy of Grace Chen's foundation. The walls were covered with cards and letters from well-wishers around the world. Someone had sent a teddy bear wearing a tennis outfit. Emma had named it Phoenix. "Are you scared?" Emma asked, but Marcus knew she wasn't talking about the surgery. "Terrified," he admitted. "About tennis?" "About everything. Coming back, living up to expectations, being in public again. About tomorrow." His voice cracked on the last word. Emma squeezed his hand. "Dr. Nguyen says the success rate is 92%. That's an 8% chance of you having to win every tournament from now on without me cheering you on," Emma finished firmly. "So I'll just have to make sure that doesn't happen." Marcus pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of the monitors and IVs. "You're the brave one, you know that." "No," Emma said into his shoulder. "I just have a really good big brother who taught me how to be strong." The surgery took 14 hours. Marcus spent them in the waiting room with an unlikely collection of supporters. Grace Chen, who'd flown back from a tournament in California. Oliver and several teammates from Westbrook's tennis team. Tom Harrison, who wasn't covering the story but just wanted to be there. George and the maintenance crew who'd brought sandwiches and refused to leave. Even Marcus's old tennis coach from Denver, who'd driven 18 hours when he heard. But the person Marcus kept looking for never came. Victoria was locked in her father's penthouse, fighting her own battle 10 miles and a world away. At hour 12, Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Kitchen loading dock. 5 minutes. Come alone." Marcus slipped out, telling Grace he needed air. The loading dock was dark, lit only by a security light. A figure stepped out of the shadows, Victoria, wearing jeans and a hooded sweatshirt, looking nothing like the polished princess he'd first met. How? Marcus started. Bribed the housekeeper, climbed down the service ladder, stole a bike, Victoria said quickly. I have maybe an hour before they realize I'm gone. How is she? Still in surgery? 2 more hours, they think. Victoria nodded, pulling something from her pocket. It was a small, worn tennis ball, signed and dated. This was from my first tournament win. I was 7. My father said it was the beginning of my becoming exceptional. She pressed it into Marcus's hand. Give it to Emma when she wakes up. Tell her it's from someone who learned that being exceptional isn't about winning. It's about choosing to fight for something bigger than yourself. Victoria, I have to go. But Marcus? She looked up at him, and in the harsh, loading dock light, he could see tears on her cheeks. That kiss I won in our bet? I'm saving it for when you win your first professional tournament. And you will win because you're not just playing for Emma anymore. You're playing for every kid who's been told they don't belong, every person who's had to choose between dreams and duty. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek, a gesture so gentle it barely felt real. You're playing for all of us who were lost until you showed us how to rise. Then she was gone, disappearing into the Boston night like a ghost. Marcus stood there, holding the tennis ball, feeling the warmth of her kiss on his cheek until his phone buzzed. She's out. Surgery successful. She's asking for you. Grace Marcus ran back into the hospital, Victoria's tennis ball clutched in his hand, his heart soaring with a mixture of relief, joy, and something else. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just about survival anymore. Maybe it was about learning to live again. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the court at the Miami Open, the same tournament he'd won as a 15-year-old prodigy, the place where the Phoenix had first earned his name. Everything was different now. He was no longer the unknown kid blazing through the rankings. He was the comeback story everyone wanted to see succeed or fail spectacularly. The media called it the return, and tickets to his matches were selling for 3 times face value. He'd fought through qualifiers to get here, playing satellite tournaments and challenges, rebuilding his ranking point by point. His body, soft from 5 years away, had been hammered back into shape by Grace's training team. His mind, fragile from carrying so much for so long, had been strengthened by a sports psychologist who specialized in trauma and comeback athletes. But the biggest change was in the stands. Emma sat in the player's box, healthy for the first time in 5 years. The surgery had been more successful than anyone had dared hope. She still had limitations, would always need to be careful, but she could walk without losing her breath, could laugh without triggering arrhythmia, could live. Next to Emma sat Grace Chen, Tom Harrison, now writing a book about the comeback, Oliver Chang, and half of Westbrook's tennis team. George, the custodian, had somehow gotten tickets and sat 2 rows back, wearing a handmade Phoenix Rises t-shirt. The seat next to Emma was empty. It had been empty at every tournament for 6 months. Victoria had vanished completely after that night at the hospital. Her father had moved her to Switzerland after her escape, enrolling her in La Rosie, the boarding school known as the School of Kings. Her social media had gone dark. Even Oliver, whose family had connections everywhere, couldn't get information about her. Marcus tried not to think about it as he prepared to serve in the semi-finals. His opponent was ranked 47th in the world, a Spanish clay court specialist who'd adapted his game to hard courts. Marcus was still unranked in the professional circuit, playing on a wildcard Grace had secured. The crowd was split, half cheering for the underdog comeback story, half waiting to see if the fairy tale would finally end. The media narrative was exhausting. Can the Phoenix rise again? From janitor to center court, the boy who gave up everything. But when Marcus tossed the ball for his first serve, all of that fell away. There was just the ball, the court, and the muscle memory his mother had drilled into him a lifetime ago. The serve exploded off his racket, 137 miles per hour, painting the corner. An ace. The match was brutal. 5 sets, 4 hours, the lead changing hands like a hot potato. The Spaniard was craftier, more experienced, with a defensive style that turned Marcus's power against him. But Marcus had something his opponent didn't. He'd already lost everything once. There was no pressure that compared to watching your sister dying, no fear greater than the one he'd already faced. In the 5th set, at 5-5, Marcus found another gear. It was the same zone he'd entered that day against Victoria, when desperation had unlocked something primal. He won 8 straight points, breaking serve, and then holding his own with 4 consecutive aces. Match point. The crowd was on its feet. Emma was crying, Grace was gripping her chair. And in the back of the stadium, almost hidden in shadow, Marcus could have sworn he saw a figure in a hooded sweatshirt watching. He served. The Spaniard returned deep. Marcus wound up for a forehand, the shot his mother had taught him when he was 7, the shot that had won him his first junior tournament, the shot that would either send him to his first professional final or end the dream. The ball exploded off his racket, catching the baseline by millimeters. The linesman's call was immediate. Good! The stadium erupted. Marcus fell to his knees, not in celebration but in exhaustion and relief. He'd done it. He'd made a professional final. The Phoenix had officially risen. Emma was the first to reach him, somehow getting past security to throw her arms around him on the court. "Mum would be so proud," she whispered, and Marcus held her tight, both of them crying on international television and not caring at all. Later, in the press conference, a reporter asked the question everyone wanted answered. "This is an incredible achievement, but you're still a 17-year-old who missed 5 crucial development years. Realistically, how far do you think you can go?" Marcus thought about the question, about realistic expectations and probable outcomes. Then he thought about Emma in a hospital bed, about Victoria standing up to her father, about his mother teaching him to serve in their backyard in Denver. "I've learned that realistic is just another word for limited," he said. 5 years ago, realistically, my sister should have died. Realistically, I should never have picked up a racket again. Realistically, a maintenance boy shouldn't have been able to beat anyone at tennis. So I'm done with realistic. I'm going to play every match like it's my last, fight for every point like it's for Emma's life, and see how far impossible can take me. The room burst into applause, but Marcus was looking at the back of the room where the hooded figure had been. The person was gone, but a note had been left on the chair. "One more match until that kiss. Make it count." The final was scheduled for Sunday afternoon. Marcus's opponent was Alexander Volkov, ranked 22nd in the world, a Russian powerhouse with a serve that regularly topped 140 miles per hour, and a temperament that had earned him the nickname the Siberian Express. Cold, relentless, unstoppable. Saturday night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He walked the grounds of the tennis center, his mind racing through strategy, technique, the thousands of small adjustments that might make the difference between victory and defeat. The moon was full, casting the empty courts in silver light. He found himself on court 7, a small outer court, where he'd played his first match as a junior. It seemed impossibly long ago, when his biggest worry was whether his mother had remembered to pack his lucky wristband. Couldn't sleep either? Marcus turned to find Alexander Volkov standing at the court entrance. The Russian was massive in person, 6'6" with shoulders that belonged on a linebacker, but his expression was thoughtful, almost melancholy. "Nerves," Marcus admitted. "Da, I understand. Your first final is big moment." Volkov walked onto the court, his footsteps surprisingly light for such a large man. "I remember my first. Lost in straight sets. Was so nervous I threw up before match. Very embarrassing." "That's oddly comforting." Volkov smiled, a surprising expression on his usually stoic face. "I know your story. Everyone knows. Is remarkable. But tomorrow, on court, Story doesn't matter. Only tennis matters. You understand? I understand. Good. Because I will not go easy. I will try to destroy you. Volkov's smile widened. But after win or lose, we drink vodka and celebrate that we are alive to play this beautiful game day. He left Marcus alone on the moonlit court, thinking about the strange fraternity of professional athletes, how competition could coexist with respect, how enemies on the court could be brothers off it. Sunday arrived with tropical heat and humidity that made the air feel like soup. The stadium was packed beyond capacity, with crowds watching on giant screens outside. The match was being broadcast in 12 countries. Someone had leaked that Grace Chen was planning to announce the Elena Valdez Tennis Academy at the trophy ceremony, win or lose. In the players' box, Emma wore a new Phoenix t-shirt, this one professionally made by a sponsor who'd approached them that week. She kept touching her chest, a nervous habit from years of monitoring her heart, but her color was good, her breathing steady. "You okay, Em?" Grace asked. "Just excited," Emma said, but her eyes kept scanning the crowd. "Looking for someone?" "Victoria. Marcus thinks she's here somewhere. She left him a note." Grace smiled knowingly. "That girl has more courage than her father ever will. Breaking out of a Swiss boarding school isn't easy. I should know, I did it once." Emma's eyes widened. "She escaped? Again?" "Let's just say Richard Sterling is about to learn that trying to cage a phoenix only makes it burn brighter." On the court, Marcus and Volkov were warming up. The Russian serves were devastating, making the court shake with their impact. Marcus's were more precise, finding corners with surgical accuracy. The crowd was already energized, sensing they were about to witness something special. The first set was all Volkov. He broke Marcus's serve in the third game and never looked back, winning 6-2 in just 28 minutes. The Russian was playing perfect tennis, his serve unreturnable, his ground strokes finding lines like they were painted just for him. In the changeover, Marcus saw Emma looking worried. He gave her a small smile and a thumbs up, their old signal that everything would be okay. But doubt was creeping in. Volkov was too good, too experienced. The fairy tale was about to end with a harsh dose of reality. The second set started the same way, with Volkov breaking serve immediately. But something shifted in the third game. Marcus stopped trying to match Volkov's power and started using it against him. He shortened points with drop shots, changed pace constantly, made the Russian move. It was the tennis equivalent of guerrilla warfare, hit and run, disrupt and confuse. It worked. Marcus broke back, then held, then broke again. The crowd, sensing a shift, grew louder with each point. By the time Marcus served out the second set, 6-4, the stadium was electric. The third set was a war. Neither player gave an inch. Every game went to deuce. Rallies stretched to 20-30 shots. Both players were drenched in sweat, operating on pure will. At 5-5, Marcus had a breakpoint, his seventh of the set. Volkov served a 142 miles-per-hour bomb down the middle. Marcus barely got his racket on it, the return floating up like a wounded bird. Volkov moved in for the kill, winding up for an overhead that would end the point. But Marcus had anticipated it. He was already moving, reading Volkov's body language like his mother had taught him. The overhead came like a missile, but Marcus was there, his racket absorbing the pace and redirecting it into a perfect passing shot. The crowd erupted. Volkov stood at the net, shaking his head in disbelief. Marcus served out the set 7-5. The fourth set was all Marcus. He was in the zone now, that magical space where thought disappeared and only instinct remained. Every serve found its mark. Every return landed deep. Every decision was correct. He won 6-2, forcing a deciding fifth set. In the changeover before the final set, Marcus looked at his player's box. Emma was standing too excited to sit. Grace was smiling with pride. Tom Harrison was scribbling notes furiously, and behind them, having somehow materialized without anyone noticing, stood Victoria Sterling. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wore a simple white dress and sunglasses, but there was no mistaking her. When Marcus's eyes met hers, she lifted her hand to her lips and blew him a kiss. Richard Sterling would later claim his daughter had been kidnapped, drugged, coerced. The truth was simpler and more devastating to his ego. She'd walked out of La Rosie's front door, taken a taxi to the airport, and flown to Miami using a credit card she'd hidden for exactly this purpose. She'd sent her father a single text. "Watch what real strength looks like." The fifth set was tennis at its purest. Both players were exhausted, running on empty, finding reserves they didn't know existed. Every point was a battle. Every game was a novel. At 4-4, Marcus was serving to stay in the match. Volkov had him at 0-30, 2 points from victory. Marcus thought about everything that had brought him here. His mother's death, Emma's illness, the years of hiding, Victoria's challenge, the weight of dreams deferred and promises kept. He'd carried so much for so long, but now, in this moment, he felt light, free. He served 4 straight aces. At 5-5, Volkov double-faulted for the first time all match. Then he hit a forehand long. Marcus had breakpoint, 1 point from serving for the championship. The rally that followed lasted 32 shots and would be replayed for years. Both players retrieved impossible balls, hit impossible angles, refused to yield. Finally, Volkov tried a drop shot. Marcus had been waiting for it, had noticed the Russian always went to that shot when exhausted. He was at the net in 3 strides, flicking the ball cross-court where Volkov couldn't reach it. Marcus would serve for the championship. The crowd was on its feet before he even tossed the ball. This was it, the moment every athlete dreams of, the chance to complete an impossible comeback. Marcus looked at Emma, at Grace, at Victoria. Then he looked at the sky where his mother was surely watching. He served. Volkov returned. Marcus hit a forehand that caught the line. Volkov retrieved it desperately. Marcus was at the net. The court opened before him. He could hit it anywhere. He hit it straight at Volkov, the ball passing the Russian before he could react, landing on the baseline with mathematical precision. Championship point. The stadium was chaos. People were crying, cheering, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Marcus bounced the ball 4 times, his pre-serve ritual unchanged since childhood. He tossed it high, his body coiling with 5 years of stored energy. The serve was perfect, not his fastest, not his most aggressive, but perfect in its placement, catching the corner with millimeter precision. Volkov lunged, got his racket on it, but the return sailed long. Game, set, match, championship, Marcus Vale/Valdez/Phoenix. Marcus collapsed on the court, not in celebration but in complete exhaustion and emotional release. 5 years of grief, struggle and sacrifice poured out of him onto the hard court of Miami. Through his tears, he saw Emma jumping the barrier, running to him with a speed that would have been impossible 6 months ago. He saw Grace Chen applauding with tears streaming down her face. He saw Tom Harrison throwing his notebook in the air. And he saw Victoria Sterling walking onto the court with the confidence of someone who belonged there. She knelt beside him as Emma crashed into them both, the 3 of them tangled in a heap of tears and laughter on center court, while 15,000 people roared their approval. "You did it," Victoria whispered in his ear. "You actually did it." "We did it," Marcus corrected, pulling both her and Emma closer. "All of us." The trophy ceremony was a blur. Volkov was gracious in defeat, telling the crowd that he'd been honored to be part of history. Grace Chen announced the Elena Valdez Tennis Academy, with Marcus as its first instructor and Victoria Sterling, to everyone's shock, as its first major benefactor, having liquidated her trust fund that morning. But the moment everyone would remember, the one that would be photographed and shared millions of times, came when the ESPN interviewer asked Marcus what this victory meant. He looked at Emma, healthy and glowing. He looked at Victoria, who'd chosen love over luxury. He looked at the crowd, at the ghosts of his past and the promise of his future. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over, he said. I thought tennis was just a game I used to play. But I learned something. Tennis isn't just a game, it's a metaphor. Every serve is a new beginning. Every return is a choice to keep fighting. Every point is a chance to prove that yesterday's defeats don't define tomorrow's victories. He paused, finding the camera that would carry his words to the world. To everyone out there carrying impossible weight, choosing between dreams and duty, feeling like you're drowning in circumstances beyond your control, keep serving, keep returning, keep fighting, because sometimes the thing that breaks you is just preparing you to rise. The crowd erupted one final time, but Marcus wasn't done. He turned to Victoria, who was trying to fade into the background. Victoria Sterling challenged me to a match 6 months ago. The terms were simple. If I won, she owed me a kiss. The crowd went silent. 15,000 people holding their breath. I won that match, but I never collected. I've been saving it. He walked to Victoria, whose face had gone scarlet. Victoria Sterling, you saved my sister's life. You stood up to your father. You gave up everything to do what was right. You're the strongest person I know. He smiled. So I'm challenging you now. Build this academy with me. Change lives with me. Rise with me. The kiss that followed wasn't the cruel joke Victoria had intended 6 months ago. It was a promise, a beginning, a declaration that sometimes the best stories come from the worst beginnings. Richard Sterling, watching from his Boston penthouse, turned off the television and poured himself a whiskey. His daughter had chosen her path. He could destroy her, cut her off, use every resource at his disposal to make her life miserable. Or he could do something he'd never done before, admit defeat. He picked up his phone and made a call to his lawyer. Not to attack, but to arrange the transfer of Victoria's full inheritance, no strings attached. Because maybe, just maybe, his daughter had learned something he never had. True strength wasn't about winning. It was about knowing what was worth fighting for. The epilogue wrote itself. 3 years later, the Elena Valdez Tennis Academy opened its doors in Denver, built on the site where Marcus had first learned to play. The dedication ceremony was attended by tennis royalty, but the guests of honor were 20 kids from underprivileged backgrounds, holding rackets for the first time. Emma, now 15 and healthy enough to play recreational tennis, coached the youngest kids with infinite patience. Her heart would never be perfect, but it was strong enough for a full life. Victoria, having graduated from Harvard Business School in record time, some habits die hard, ran the academy's operations with ruthless efficiency and surprising warmth. She'd rebuilt her relationship with her father slowly, teaching him that there were things more valuable than victory. Marcus, at 21, was ranked 18th in the world in climbing. He'd won 3 ATP titles and made the quarterfinals of the US Open. The Phoenix nickname had stuck, but now it meant something different. Not just his rise, but his ability to help others rise too. Tom Harrison's book, The Phoenix Court, spent 30 weeks on the bestseller list. Oliver Chang, inspired by the story, started a non-profit providing sports equipment to underprivileged schools. Even George the custodian got involved, becoming the Academy's head of operations because, as he said, someone needs to keep you kids grounded. But the moment that mattered most came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No cameras present, no crowds watching. Marcus was teaching a 7-year-old girl named Rosa, who reminded him painfully of Emma at that age, sick, scared, but desperate to play. "I can't do it," Rosa said, near tears after missing her 10th serve. "It's too hard." Marcus knelt beside her, adjusting her grip gently. "My mum used to tell me something. She said tennis isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to try again." "But what if I never get it?" "Then you'll be like me," Marcus said. "I missed thousands of serves before I made one, but the one I made, it changed my life, Rosa served again. This time, the ball cleared the net, landing just inside the service box. Her face lit up like she'd won Wimbledon. Victoria, watching from the office window, felt her eyes well up. She thought about that day on Westbrook's courts when she'd tried to humiliate a maintenance boy for sport. She couldn't have imagined it would lead here, to this moment, to this life she'd never known she wanted. Her phone buzzed, Richard Sterling texting, "Saw the Academy featured in the Times. Your mother would be proud. I am too." It had taken him 3 years to say it, but like his daughter had learned, sometimes the most important victories came slowly. That evening, as the sun set over Denver, painting the courts gold, Marcus and Victoria walked through the academy grounds. Emma was leading a group of kids in stretches, her laughter carrying on the wind. The walls were covered with photos, Marcus's mother, his comeback, the kids who'd already found hope here. "Any regrets?" Victoria asked. Marcus thought about it. About the years lost, the pain endured, the dreams deferred. Then he looked at Emma, healthy and happy, at Victoria, who'd become so much more than the mean girl who challenged him, at the academy that bore his mother's name. "No," he said simply. "Every serve led to the next return. Every loss led to this win. Even that first match, when I was so cruel, especially that match." He took her hand. "You challenged me to beat you and said you'd kiss me if I won. But you were wrong about the prize." "How so?" "The prize wasn't a kiss. The prize was everything that came after. Emma's life, the academy, you choosing to become who you really are instead of who you were raised to be. Us." Victoria squeezed his hand. "So what you're saying is, I gave you the greatest gift possible by being absolutely horrible. I'm saying that sometimes the worst moments create the best stories." As if on cue, Emma called out, "Marcus! Victoria! Come see! Rosa just served 5 in a row." They ran toward Emma's voice, toward the future they'd built from the ashes of their pasts. Behind them, the setting sun turned the courts to gold, and somewhere in that light, Elena Valdez was surely smiling. Because her son had kept his promise. He'd protected Emma. He'd honored the gift of tennis. And he'd learned the most important lesson she'd ever tried to teach. True victory isn't about never falling. It's about rising every time you do, and teaching others to rise with you. The end.